Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Anyone who wants to move up towards the front, it's my record that I play every week. You're all welcome to come a little closer and gather in. So today is a first. It's the first time ever in my experience that we have as our speaker someone who is a graduate, not just of the school, but of the New York Review of Magazine's workshop. And he wrote a memorable, Adam Pitluk wrote a memorable piece about, of all things, the National Enquirer and other such magazines when he was taking this workshop, and a very interesting take on it. And I urge those of you who follow that publication to look at it, and I think it's still up online in the way that we construct things. But I have copies in my office for those who are interested. Adam, you got out of here in 2004, so he looks like he just walked in, but he actually, when one goes down the list of what he's done, it's hard to believe this. Some of it started before, during, and some after, but I'll give you a little peek at it. He's won his share of awards. He's the author of Damned to Eternity and Standing 8, both books which did very well, and Sam Friedman's book workshop gave birth to Adam as a book writer. They're studies of the human condition, and he's currently the executive editor of American Way magazine and Celebrated Living magazine, the in-flight and first-class magazines of American Airlines. Now, I don't want to step on your speech, Adam, but he told me something in his office which was staggering to me in my office. They have published 100 articles by people who came through this school. So if I were you, I would get my pitches ready right now and take advantage of his presence here. His work has appeared. Well, let's see. He was at Time magazine for I think 8 years. He was at People magazine. His work has appeared in, among others, Smithsonian Air and Space, Popular Mechanics, New York Daily News. I'm glad to see he includes New York Review of Magazines on this list, the Dallas Morning News, Cleveland Plain Dealer, Vail Daily, Broward Palm Beach New Times, Details, Riverfront Times, D Magazine, and Fort Worth Weekly. And he has a Bachelor of Journalism from the University of Missouri and an MS from Columbia. I'm going to make a bad taste. It's not a joke, but it's a fact. We had David Remnick here a couple of weeks ago. Some of you were here and remember, and he talked about having an autistic child. Adam has talked about overcoming dyslexia in his youth, and you'll see that how bravely and effectively he did it. So this is a journalism and social work workshop that we have here, and so we're very pleased that you're with us. Adam, why don't you come up here and tell us what we ought to know? Okay, so Adam Pitluk. So, great.
Thanks, Professor Navasky, and it really is an honor to be back here. Are you sure you don't want to move closer? I wore a suit.
Come on up.
All right. Adam Pitluk, American Way Magazine, the in-flight magazine of American Airlines. How many of you have flown on an airplane before? There's a couple that haven't, huh? Who hasn't? Okay, so all of you have flown on an airplane. How many of you, before starting your journalism education here, were road warriors in your past lives? You had to fly consistently, constantly. What's your name?
My name's Fred.
Fred.
Yeah.
Fred, where did you fly to, and what did you do?
Europe a lot, New Zealand. I was a journalist covering bicycle races. So
Okay, so you followed the tours where they went.
Bike races.
Why couldn't you just cover them by watching the coverage on TV? Why'd you have to get on the airplane and fly to New Zealand? That's not like flying to Hartford.
Because it's bicycle racing, no one in the States will put it on TV.
Okay, so it was important for you to be there. You actually had to engage your story, your coverage, and because, I mean, you look fit, but you probably can't swim to New Zealand, so you got to get on one of our planes, right? Or a plane.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did fly American Airlines a lot to Europe, and it was okay.
I work in the publishing, not in the... Who else? Who are some other road warriors from? Yes, ma'am. What's your name? Sarah? Sarah, what did you do in your former life?
I was a reporter for a couple years and a banker for a few years before.
A banker? Is that what you said? Not a lawyer, though. Okay. Where were you flying?
Brazil with American Airlines.
So, and how
Adam,
come you-
could you repeat what she says, so, because there's a recording being made of this, and we want to hear it.
Yes, she's a banker, was a banker and a
Right.
journalist flying on American Airlines to Brazil. Why did you have to go to Brazil for these meetings? That's also New Zealand-esque in terms of jet lag and leg cramps.
Well, just for fun.
Just for fun? So you had to be there in person? I like to hear that. All of you, if you haven't learned it already, know that there is a benefit as a reporter, as a journalist, as a banker, as a lawyer, of actually being in front of your sources or your story. Or anybody, any relationship is fostered better in a one-on-one relationship than teleconferencing, video conferencing. No offense to our people going into the video realm. But the travel industry, especially vis-a-vis journalism, is undergoing tremendous changes. It used to be that the travel industry, and to a lesser extent the travel media, was bulletproof. It was a bulletproof industry. Whether you traveled for business, like our two friends here, or whether you'd like to just, snag a cheap flight down to Fort Lauderdale for the weekend, the dissemination of travel journalism, travel tips was booming. It was flourishing, especially in 1999 with the internet explosion. And with that, there were travel-friendly sites. There were booking engines that popped up that helped you get that aforementioned flight down to Fort Lauderdale. When the flights were full and the airlines had load factors that they could bank on, there were even a greater proliferation of magazines, travel-geared magazines, general interest travel-geared magazines that sprouted out, offering all things travel. I mean, from gadgets to pillows to headphones to a laundry list of activities once you touch down in Cleveland. All of that was out there. But since travel media is a big business, and it's a big business just as subservient to the forces of capitalism as the auto industry. So when it rained, it not only poured, but it's still pouring on us right now in the travel industry. Just in recent history, you could break it down with...
I don't know. Modern technology. Where's the man who is in charge of this? Here we go. They're calling you, Adam.
I'd appreciate it more if that
Pilot
person
up
would have
front.
flown here on American Airlines too. All right,
Done.
let's go back in recent history real quick to see how and why the travel industry and business of travel writing is floundering to an extent. 9/11 changed the airline industry forever, and it still hasn't recovered. There's less flights, there's fewer planes, and yet there's more people. The fares haven't gone up. It's a business model. The airline business model is, if you go ask the guys across the way getting their MBAs from here, it's a flawed business plan. It's almost impossible for an airline to make money. Skyrocketing jet fuel prices hasn't helped that out, and we've seen two legacy carriers go file for bankruptcy protection in the last 5 years. We also saw Southwest Airlines, long the darling of aviation, it lost money for the first time in 17 years. American Airlines is still the only legacy carrier that hasn't filed for bankruptcy protection, but you're journalism students. I'm hoping you're reading the Wall Street Journal, and if you are, you're realizing that American Airlines hemorrhages money every quarter to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's still very much a grim picture out there. Every time it floods down in Texas or in St. Louis, or every time it snows at O'Hare, or every time the skies jam over Manhattan and slows down takeoffs and landings, the airline takes a hit. The travel industry takes a hit. So it's a really grim scene out there for travel and leisure industry as a whole. And look how that's translated to the publishing industry. I got a laundry list here of titles, some of which were not only fantastic magazines, but were at the top of their respective fields that have all gone the way of, to use an airline pun, gone the way of the DC-10. National Geographic Adventure folded after a decade. Metropolitan Homes folded after 28 years. Gourmet Magazine had been around since 1941. Southern Accents, which was founded in 1977, is gone. Blender and Best Life, Travel and Leisure Golf, Hallmark and Domino Teen, which started in 1954. Country Home, Atlanta Peach, Cottage Living, O at Home, Men's Vogue, Radar, Cosmo Girl Home, Golf for Women. And sadly, the list goes on. Sadder still is that all those magazines folded in the last 2.5 years. But there is a silver lining I'm here to tell you about. And it's a silver lining for aspiring magazine journalists. This silver lining was actually once more of a tattered loincloth than it was a silver lining. Not so many years ago. A tattered loincloth, I should say, in terms of sheer substance. Talking about a product that was more of a diversion than a thoughtful, provoking, insightful, and educational read. One that just a decade ago would never be on par with its contemporaries, whereby the editor would be asked to speak in the hallowed halls of the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. And one that is not only coming of age while other magazines are limping off to their dying place, but one that is increasingly becoming a serious threat to general interest magazines, leisure magazines, especially their advertising dollars. Because I'm here to tell you the in-flights are bigger, badder, and smarter than ever. We've rebranded ourselves in a major way, and here's why. For starters, we, at least at American Airlines and American Way magazine, consider ourselves a general interest magazine with a travel twist. We are the only in-flight magazine that's published every 2 weeks. All the other in-flights are either published every month, some of them are published quarterly. And as such, we come out on the 1st and the 15th of every month. Now, it used to be up until about 1.5 years ago that all 24 issues of American Way had celebrity covers. And when I became the editor about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I thought that was counterproductive. One, because we commissioned a reader survey that said that only about 33% of our passengers actually wanted to read what Paula Abdul was up to. And also because we are, at our core, a travel magazine. We were trying to out People magazine with our celebrity covers, and it wasn't necessary. People didn't necessarily want to know, weren't looking to us to know what makes Jake Gyllenhaal tick. But if you're interested, our June 1st cover is Jake Gyllenhaal. So I kept the celebrities for the first issue of the month, and then I made the 15th issue. The covers are now travel destinations. That's our standard. Now, it used to be that a travel story in American Way was basically a laundry list of where to get the best boat drinks in Belize, for instance. And the answer is Fido's on San Pedro Island. But because of the aforementioned doom and gloom of the magazine industry, we've taken it upon ourselves to fill the gap, fill the void left by our predecessors. So travel stories might still be where to find the 10 best pizzerias in the country, 2 of which are actually here in New York City. But we've broadened our definition of travel to be more inclusive of future happenings in cities that we happen to travel to. And the stories are much more consequential. They're much more impactful. We just ran a story about the Wounded Warrior Soldier Ride, which these are bike tours that aren't so much about getting the injured and wounded soldiers into the sun for a couple of days as they are about getting them out of their beds for the rest of their lives. The story was written by a Columbia grad. In June, we revisited the 1-year anniversary of the Great Midwestern Floods of 2008, which absolutely decimated Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Our conclusion was that the people are fighting back and rebuilding, but that city is still in dire straits. And that's not exactly the sort of story you're accustomed to seeing in an in-flight magazine, especially because we're trying to get you to fly to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So we're changing the rules. You have in your hands the first issue of American Way honoring Black History Month in our 47-year publishing history. 2 stories in that issue, my Ed Note and then the Civil Rights and Blues Tour of the Old South, would have been considered unpublishable just 3 years ago because of the grim and rather embarrassing subject matter of 60s hate crimes and discrimination in the old Jim Crow South. So it was a gamble on our part to tackle these stories. You could find, I'd submit to you, the stories we're doing now could find homes just as easily in the pages of Time Magazine or The Nation. But you're finding them, it's now a general interest. It's not niche, and it's not just something you're reading in your doctor's office. And it was a personal risk for me because here's this guy who came out of nowhere and basically tried to change the face of a magazine that many of our passengers have been reading and flying this airline since before I was born. But it's paid off. And here's why. 2 years ago, we were the 4th most read in-flight magazine. As of January of this year, according to independent MRI tracking, we're number 1, with a 3.6 million monthly readership. By comparison, and according to information from the ABC audit, GQ has 934,000 readers per issue, Vanity Fair is at 1.1 million, Vogue's at 1.2 million, and The New Yorker has a readership of 1 million per issue. Now, we're no New Yorker, and I know this. And next time David Rebnick's here, I'm going to fly up to watch him speak myself, because those are one of the small perks you have of working for an airline. But while we're no New Yorker, and I'm certainly no Rebnick, American Way is becoming more New Yorker-esque. That's because with all these folding magazines, there's basically a 500-year storm of talented, out-of-work writers, and we're snatching them up with reckless abandon. 2 of my old bosses from my days at Time Magazine are writing for us. 3 of my old bosses from my days with Village Voice Media are writing for us. And as Professor Navasky said, no fewer than 100 Columbia alumni have written in some capacity. Professor Friedman, by the way, if you have the opportunity, I seriously consider you take his courses and listen to every word he says. 100 Columbia alumni in 2 years in some capacity are writing for American Way, Celebrated Living, or one of the other 15 titles that American Airlines Publishing produces. We welcome your queries. We welcome any professional writer's queries, if he or she has a marquee name, of course. But we're also out there hunting you, believe it or not. We're tracking you down, we're reading your clips, and affectionately, we're poaching you for freelance stories. Like the Smokey Robinson story that you have in front of you. It used to be that only a handful of people wrote the American Way cover stories. It was a good old boy network. I was living down in Texas for quite a few years, which is where American Way is published. I knew the editor, I knew all the other editors around it, and I couldn't break in for the life of me. And it wasn't because they thought I was a hack, it was because they had the 5 or 6 writers that they were comfortable with. It was consistent, they knew what they were going to get, and it was very little risk. But we changed all that. These days, I'm out there looking for the best writers to match the subject, which is why W. Kim Herron, the editor of the Metro Times in Detroit, who is one of the most storied music writers, I think, in the business, was courted by us to write that Smokey Robinson story. That's why David Epstein, a Columbia grad, who broke the A-Rod steroid scandal for Sports Illustrated, was approached to write a story about how parents are spending top dollar to get their children gene mapped in an attempt to find out if their son or daughter is the next Tiger Woods. Athletically, of course. To that end, we actually had Tiger Woods slated for the cover of American Way this summer. And we pulled it, or we're in the process of pulling it, because although we're trying to be taken more seriously, we are still a family magazine, and we don't want to out-people People magazine. And finally, I'd like to encourage you to read back issues of us online and come forward with your queries. I'll also tell you that although we're on a hiring freeze company-wide, we still answer to the AMR Corporation, the parent company of American Airlines. When the freeze is over, I'll be hiring some new editors, and this is where I'm coming. I'm coming after you people. And I'm coming after you because I need savvy writers who have a nose for a good story, and basically who knows social media, which is something that I graduated here in '04, and it's way over my head already. It's changing that quickly. One more time, how many of you have flown before? How many of you have flown American Airlines before? I like to hear that. Here's an assignment, all right? The next time you're on an American Airlines flight, look around you at your fellow travelers and watch them. Don't stalk them, per se, because that'll make that flight to LA even more uncomfortable than it may already be in coach, but not on American Airlines. Watch them, though, and watch what they're reading. Inevitably, they're going to have that magazine in their hands. Whether they want to read our cover story on India, or they just want to know how to maneuver around the New York LaGuardia Airport, Chicago O'Hare, Brazil. They're coming to us. We're going to get their eyeballs on that flight. And once they're in our pages, good storytelling will keep them around for the duration of their flight. And these aren't just Wisconsin tourists we're talking about here either that snagged that aforementioned cheap flight down to Fort Lauderdale. The people on these planes, these are the doctors, the lawyers, politicians, students, teachers, captains of industry. Even David Remnick himself will be on our planes. All right? Your message in an in-flight magazine is no longer the best boat drinks in Belize. This is an important magazine now with important writers. That's the one silver lining in this down economy is we're getting the best of the best right now. It's an honor to be here. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Why don't you come over here, and thank you. Great. Did it ever conceivably occur to you that you would end up doing this when you were sitting out here and being a student here?
I interviewed for a job at Southwest Airlines in-flight magazine, which is, can you hear me okay? Which is where I was for a couple of years before I came to American Way. And in my job interview, the editor asked me what my dream job was. And I told him straight-faced that my dream job is to be the editor of an in-flight magazine, and he laughed. And I was 100% serious because although I miss the hard news days, I miss chasing stories, I miss being out of the Dallas bureau and getting a call from the news desk in New York at Time Magazine saying, there's a hurricane coming to New Orleans, it might flood, we need you to get into the city as fast as possible. I miss those days, but this job and jobs like it put me in touch with the world and the world is what I care about. I want to know these people, I want to know what's going around, what's happening around them. And so the short answer is, when I was here, did I think I'd be doing this? I hoped I would be, but I didn't think it'd be. I didn't think it would happen this quickly.
Okay. Is there a status ranking among the in-flight magazines that is generally understood by the people who are in the business? And could you tell us where they think American Way fits in?
Slam the competition.
But also, if I'm going to fly to a place that American Airlines doesn't go, and I want to do it by magazine rather than by anything else, what should I read? What should one know?
Okay, the pecking order first among the airline magazines. I can go off straight readership numbers first, and then I'll try to allude to my opinions and the industry's opinions. Good. But since we're broadcasting live, this is one of those questions that could come back to haunt me later on. American Way is regarded as, if not the best, one of the best in-flight magazines, and it has been for years. A couple days ago, we were awarded the Award of Merit by the North American Travel Journalists Association. And the reason we consistently have a favorable reputation is because our passengers are these shakers and movers we're talking about. This is a very educated audience, very savvy. The other quagmire is that we're trying to be something for everybody. As a result, if we're not doing our job, we'll hear it. Now, the other in-flight magazines are in somewhat of controlled chaos right now, to the extent that Pace Communications, which used to publish Southwest Airlines Spirit, United Hemispheres, U.S. Airways magazine, and Delta Sky, all right? Within the last 5 years, they lost 2 of their titles. United Hemispheres, which I believe went to a publishing house in Minnesota, and Delta Sky went to Inc. over in London. So they're reshaping. I personally think Delta is one of the best magazines out there. I think they're doing a fantastic job restructuring. I think Southwest Airlines Spirit magazine, which used to be about 7, 8 years ago, I think it was the best in-flight magazine of them all. I think it's now the worst because they've completely done away with their core content, and it's basically, to me, it looks like a coloring book now. That's just my opinion. So, yes, there is a pecking order. I don't really so much care about the industry, how people in the industry view. Well, let me retract that. I do care what people in the industry think of us. I care much more about what the passenger flying New York, LA, or New York, San Fran thinks about us. So if you want to write for us, yes, the best thing you can do is be familiar with us and to know where we fly, because I can't tell you how many times I'll get a story pitch to Zimbabwe, want to do an article on Zimbabwe, and we don't fly anywhere near Zimbabwe. I mean, yes, we are trying to be more consequential. We are a periodical that has substance, but at the end of the day, we are the voice of American Airlines, and we have to serve our master.
What is the difference in, you've talked a little about it, but I'm interested in more detail about it. What's the difference between working for this is not a house organ. It is the publication that is, frankly, there to help the correct me if I'm wrong, but help the American Airlines brand by projecting its image out there, by putting out an interesting magazine for its readers and artists. But as an employee, you know, yes, you're interested in the world, but if you were working for The Economist, you'd be writing about the world. What are the pluses and minuses of working for a controlled circulation publication, both in terms of the day-to-day editorial freedom and life that you have, in terms of the economic rewards that you do or don't have, and in terms of the feedback that you get from readers, et cetera. So.
Okay. I think I'm like a lot of you in the sense that when I was here at Columbia, when I got out, yes, I wanted a job, but I also was an idealist. I was basically a lone wolf. For 10 years, at least, I was out there, although I was reporting to parent companies like a Time Inc. I mean, I was out there trying to do my own thing, and the best bosses I had were the bosses that were in New York when I was in Dallas. I like to be left alone. I'm sure some of you are like that to an extent. This is a complete 360 because who here has seen the movie Office Space, for instance? Okay. I have 8 bosses, at least. So anytime I screw up, I hear from at least 8 different people, which is pretty much how it goes, and I don't mind it one bit. I love working.
What's an example of your screwing up?
Perfect example was I guess it was like my 3rd day of work. I had to approve a cover on, it was Mila Kunis. I think that was her name. This is when we're still doing 24 celebrity covers a year. Who knows who Mila Kunis is? All right, so I said her name right? Okay. The cover was way, way, way too risque for a family publication. There were nary a stitch of clothes on her from around here. And this was not a very smart way to announce to 3.6 million readers a month that here's the new guy and he's turning American Way into Maxim. I heard about that, and rightfully so. I don't mind this corporate structure now. In fact, I needed it, and I welcome it, and I enjoy it because, yes, I'm an editor, but beyond that, which supersedes that, is I'm an American, and I want my economy to succeed, and the airline industry is a very big part of that. So goes the airline industry, so goes a lot of other industries around it. So this has helped me. it's helped us, the magazine, in the sense that, yes, it's a controlled readership. Yes, I got you when you're en route to Nashville, and even if you just want to know the terminal layout, you're going to have to look through our magazine. If you want to know what movies are playing on that TransCon flight, you're going to look to the magazine. The benefit to us by having a revolving door of readers is that no subject has to be off limits. We could do stories that we're not pigeonholed. It doesn't necessarily just have to be a story about why Chicago is great. It could be a story about Buddy Guy giving you, the passenger, the reader, a tour of Chicago, a blues tour of Chicago, a story that we're not only working on, that Professor Sam Freeman's going to probably write for us. So we have that outlet, we have that luxury. And because we're a controlled readership, we're a fixed audience, our advertising revenue, although softer than years past, we were profitable last year. That's an anomaly in publishing in the last 2 years. We've been profitable every single year at American Airlines Publishing. So it's comforting to know that there's a job tomorrow.
But do you, sitting there, because you're in touch with this travel world, you're in touch with your, do you have ideas for stories that you know are not right for your magazine, so you don't propose them or assign them, but that it's frustrating for you because there's some great investigation that ought to be carried on, and you want to share them with us so that we can...
Yeah, I mean, I still love the investigative stories. I mean, I think we could still do them, but be a little bit more delicate or have more tact in our approach. I think a good example is that Cedar Rapids flood story that I alluded to. There's absolutely no good that could come from an economic standpoint telling people that a city we fly to is in shambles a year after a flood. It's bad business from a fiscal standpoint, but I think it's honest, and I think that because we were honest and because we showed Cedar Rapids warts and all, I think that in turn can actually encourage people to go, whether it's to help, whether it's to rebuild, whether it's to see for themselves. So I think that there is a silver, I think we could still do these stories that may otherwise be too risky for an in-flight with a controlled readership and audience, but I think that that's where the really talented writers come in. The stories are out there. I want you to find them and help me understand how to present them in a palatable manner.
But I assume there are certain no-nos beyond don't attack the chairman of the board.
Right.
But what about, for example, a story on the shoe bomber, or any story on terrorism
Good
and
question.
airlines? Is that something that's just off the, you're not supposed to write about that, or is that something that is of interest to flyers? And
it's interesting to me to read it in the pages of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. I don't think it behooves anybody that's sitting in an airplane to read about plane crashes. Especially because a lot of people have a fear of flying. I'm very, very sympathetic to that.
Right.
And it's the wrong forum, it's the wrong audience, and quite frankly, at least in this magazine, this airline has one, if not the best safety records out there. So why bring to their attention? Right. You know, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was at Southwest Airlines in-flight magazine Spirit, I got a pitch from a writer who wanted to review United Flight 93 in the pages of, number one, it's a different airline, and number two, it's about a plane crash. It just boggled my mind. Anyway, that writer's name's on a list, an ever-growing list of do not replies. You know, so no, I don't think it's necessary, and I think it does no service to draw attention to what could be some people's fears.
Good. Why don't you join the conversation then?
Or
use
sue.
a microphone and sure.
I take it that American Airlines Publishing is a unit of American Airlines. That's different from the way most in-flight magazines are published on competitive bid, basically.
Exactly.
For revenue sharing purposes. Can you talk about why American came to this conclusion that it wanted to bring this back in-house, and what that means, how that might be different in the way you operate vis-a-vis your competitors, your other in-flight magazines?
Excellent question. American Airlines has the distinction of being the only airline with a publishing house housed inside the corporation. We are very much a full-service, full-scale, turnkey publishing house. We have American Way, we have Celebrated Living, and we have Nexos, which is our in-flight that's in Spanish and Portuguese. So 3 titles in flight right there. We also have a custom publishing arm, like a Pace Communications that does the other magazines. And they do, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's somewhere along the lines of 12 different titles right now for hire. Everything from Fort Worth Magazine to Sense, which is a magazine for a credit union. So when you ask, why did American bring it in-house? Quite simply because they cracked a formula in publishing where you can make money. And I like it better this way because I like knowing that, yes, I'm putting out information at the behest of American Airlines, but I like knowing that the CEO is 3 floors above my office, and if need be, we can get in front of him and make a case. If you're outsourcing it, if you're, for instance, publishing Delta's magazine now out of England, that's a little bit harder to do. So I like having that safety net, that warm blanket of safety, knowing that we're all right there. And because it would make more sense to me if the other airlines did this. American Airlines Publishing, up until 4 years ago, published Southwest Airlines magazine, Spirit. Sort of odd bedfellows, but they did a fantastic job with it. So there is not only money to be made in publishing for the airline, but you close ranks, and we're all right there.
And I assume that they don't have websites because you're on a plane and or do you?
We do.
We do, okay.
AmericanWayMag.com is our website, and our hits are growing. Because I'd like to think that the word's getting out there that there are very good stories in American Way that appeal to a larger audience. And when I said that when the hiring freeze is over, we'll be coming looking for younger, or at least recent graduates, that's no joke, because we're making all sorts of social media pushes. We have a Twitter site, we have a Facebook site, we blog. I mean, there's message boards. We're trying to do it. Of course, it's not catching like wildfire, because historically you don't think to go to an airline's in-flight magazine to blog or to to see their tweets. But we're developing it, and we need fresh ideas for that.
Can you describe how big is the newsroom of your magazine, and how is it different from the rest of the magazines you've been working for before?
Yeah, the newsroom at American Way Magazine is the 3rd floor of Building 1 of like a 5-building complex of American Airlines Corporation. We have a little corner where we have our glory posters hanging up of covers past, and there's probably 500 other people on the floor, and they don't know what we do, and we don't really know what they do. So it's not a bustling newsroom in the sense that, it's not 30 Rock, it's not NBC, it's not New York Times, but it is probably better that way, because I don't think that a bustling newsroom in a Fortune 500 company might make sense. So it's quiet, I should say.
And what about the staff? How many assistant editors do you have?
Okay, we have, and you could check my accuracy in the masthead there. We have senior editor, 2 associates, an assistant, copy editor, 2 fact checkers, and then art direct, 1 main art director, 2 associate art directors, a photo researcher. I mean, I think I'm missing some people that are going to be very upset. We have every bit as big of a staff as a general interest publication. I mean, and with 3.6 million readers, we need to be pretty well staffed up. New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand. Gotta love that place. I flew Air New Zealand there, which is an amazing place, but I think their magazine is trash.
I do too.
Yeah. Anyway, I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about these improvements that the magazine went through, kind of the economic drivers behind that. I mean, when I think of, when a conventional magazine, not saying yours is not conventional, but when a magazine goes through improvements or redesign, it's because it's under, economic stresses, falling readership, things like that. But, in the model that I see with these in-flight magazines, it's like, how can you tell if your readership is falling? How can you tell if your magazine is under stress to improve better? I was hoping you could maybe help us understand that a little bit better.
Absolutely. Last question first. The MRI does independent tracking. That's how we at least know the numbers of readers, whether that's rising or falling. And they do it for all the in-flights. It's not commissioned in-house. It's not an American Airlines study. This is independent. Why do we redesign? Why do we do that? I mean, quite frankly, to stay fresh and to stay relevant. If you look at an American Airlines magazine from the 80s, it's markedly different than it is right now, not only in design, but the substance is a lot different. Now, let me correct something I said. American Airlines and American Way magazine wasn't all boat drinks a few years ago. There are, of course, some important, hard-hitting, consequential stories, just not at the same frequency that we're seeing now. And you're seeing it now because we have, and there are writers out there that ordinarily wouldn't be looking for work that now are. So we're getting these marquee names, these premium names, at the right time for us, in the same sense that we're trying to build our page count, we're trying to build our readership, we're trying to build our reputation. It's the American Airlines and the American Way brand takes you only so far. The writers, for us, help perpetuate that scenario. So yes, the money, and when you hit the big names and you do the good stories and you win the awards, the money comes. The advertisers could sell off that. Our marketing people and our ad reps, they can sell a big name writer, a Larry Grobel interviewing Anthony Hopkins. They can sell that. They can market that. That answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, why don't you use the microphone if you could, sir? Thank you.
I was wondering how important it is that the passengers take your magazine with them when they leave the plane in terms of your selling advertising, and then how do you get them to do that?
I love it. You know what I love? I love watching a passenger think that they're stealing a magazine. Like, they'll look around, slide it into their carry-on, and I'll just sit there with ear to ear, the smile on my face. That's our goal, is we want you to take the magazine. We print plenty of these things to replenish your seat back pockets. So that is important to us. It's, I'd like to say it's very important to the advertisers. Truthfully, I don't know well enough about the schematics of the advertising campaigns and how they do it to know if that's really their end game. I'm sure it couldn't hurt, though, if it's on somebody's coffee table and there's an ad for the 10 best steak restaurants in North America sitting on that coffee table. So it's important to us editorially. I got to imagine it is to the advertisers as well.
Yeah, there other? Sure.
I was interested in the story on Cedar Rapids that you described, because whenever you get involved, or a corporation gets involved with a municipality dealing with public officials who have authority over airports and so on, this can be a very complicated relationship. Did that come into play in that particular story, where you had to be somewhat critical of, I would think, the leadership of some public officials if the city has not been restored to its former health?
Yeah, well, it wasn't so much the city officials that I was concerned about. It was FEMA and the government, the big brother, that the city officials were accusing of being too slow in their response. That got a little bit dicey, because now you're walking the line of an advocacy piece, which we didn't want to do. We still wanted to be objective and present both sides. So yes, that did get dicey. It was a crapshoot. We rolled the dice and we did it anyway. And I think it paid off. I think it not only was an important read, but it went viral online. It was, with permission, reprinted in the Cedar Rapids newspaper. So, you know, it helped to affect change. And anytime any publication can do that, I don't care if you're an in-flight or if you're the street paper, I think that's important. I mean, that's why we're all here at our core.
Have you followed the launch of the so-called iPad, the tablet, and does that have any, and any of these other gadgets, does that have any application to what you do?
When I said that when the hiring freeze is over and we're going to be hiring new editors and I'm coming here, that's no joke, and it's for several reasons. Number one, this is my cell phone, and you have to basically turn a crank to start it. It's ancient, and I can't figure out for the life of me the new technology. These new iPads, the iBooks, all of which, you know, I do know what they are, of course, and we write about them. We're not working on anything with them. I do welcome it. I think it's going to be great. I think it'll help us pumping our name out there. But whereas the scuttle is that some magazines and newspapers are concerned for their circulations and readership once these things go live, I'm not worried. I think it could help us. I mean, this magazine's not going away. It will, so long as there are seat back pockets, you'll always have a tactile American Way magazine in it.
Good.
Are there any other thoughts, questions, afterthoughts? If not, may you fly high, and thank you for being with us. And
It's been
I
a
look
pleasure.
forward to all of you publishing in This Man's Magazine. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, different world.